Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Kiamugumo Wash Process Kenya from Pilot Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Pilot, based out of Toronto, Ontario. So I'm going to go ahead and allow my good friend and Toronto-born rapper Drake to introduce my favorite meme, as it could not be more fitting since this is a Toronto-based coffee roaster, and this is a Kenyan coffee, and this meme demonstrates my sentiment towards Kenyan coffees as a whole. But yeah, Pilots, this is our first time reviewing them on this channel. They were featured in our most recent blind taste test rankings video as part of a viewer subscriber recommendation suggestion series where they did finish 5th place out of 6 coffees on that day. But one big note about that is Pilot's the only coffee roaster that was not suggested to us. They're a coffee roaster I've wanted to review ever since my trip to Toronto was canceled back in March of 2020. You can definitely assume why that trip was canceled. But looking forward to finally getting an opportunity to discuss them. This right here is day 42 of this coffee. The recipe we went with for this coffee was a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 200 degrees Fahrenheit through the Chemex with a medium grind. And this was a pretty developed coffee, so we'll call this a Canadian medium for the roast profile. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 27, first impression, and it was Kenyan-like right off the bat, and that made it very easy to pick out this coffee from the table. In addition to that, it had a very slight bit of roastiness, could definitely tell it was the most developed cup of coffee on that table, but traditional savory tomato-like characteristics with a slight bit of nice red fruit sweetness coming from it as well. It was actually a pretty decent first impression to this cup, and weirdly enough, I felt like there was a fair bit of potential. Trying it on day 27, it's kind of funny because I feel like for a coffee that may be a little bit more developed like this, then it probably would have been better on earlier days, but you know, it happens, so we move on. Day 30, coffee definitely, again, felt a little bit more developed than anything else I was drinking, especially from that viewer subscriber recommendation suggestion series, but it works in a positive sense for this coffee, and this is always kind of a funny thing because people know how I feel about Kenyan coffees and people see me as a more lighter coffee drinker. So as a whole, it had a pretty nice bit of red fruit characteristics to it, but they were slightly toned down because of the development in this coffee. Herbal florals, actually been pretty okay so far. Kind of liked it so far. Day 32 ran into the Chemex, and even then it was noticeably better. So this was the best I had experienced from this cup of coffee, not quite as savory, but somewhat more balanced. Slightly herbal and citric with a slight bit of this enjoyable burnt sugar sweetness in the cup. Pretty solid. I'm experiencing that again today. I actually quite like this burnt sugar taste that comes from slightly more developed cups of coffee. Day 34, a bit more of the lively berry in this cup, and it was definitely on the sweeter side as opposed to the savory side, so that's a huge positive for me, especially for a Kenyan cup of coffee. Making them a lot more enjoyable. Was seeing improvement in this cup of coffee, which again is pretty strange. This cup of coffee has gone against the trend. I'm going to take another sip. Day 36 ran into the automatic coffee maker, and it wasn't quite as fun. It wasn't quite as lively and enjoyable on this day. A lot of those lively red fruits that I'd been experiencing were a slight bit toned down, and in its place was a more robust body and a chocolate-like cup, so not necessarily two of my favorite things. Just okay. I'm gonna go back to the Chemex because I was really enjoying the clarity that was coming from the Chemex for this cup of coffee. Day 38, still weirdly enjoying this cup of coffee more than expected. The savoriness just kind of radiates at a level that's not too overbearing, but at the same time it's reminiscent quite a bit of cranberry juice. That's probably the red fruit characteristic I would most closely align it with. Not too surprising, it's a Kenyan, it's a very Kenyan-like Kenyan, so let's keep going. Day 39, ran it through the AeroPress and felt that there was probably a bit of potential. Maybe if I would have played around with the AeroPress a little bit more, I might have been able to get something more out of it, but the cup really emphasized the red berries once again. Lots of these strong, tart cranberries, robust yet sweet cup, slightly smoky, pretty decent this way as well, and again, maybe I should have tinkered around with that a little bit more, but liking it both ways, AeroPress and Chemex for this coffee. Alright, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And we have quite a few level 4s, so let's run through them real quick. So the finish at level 4, I mean, it's a Kenyan, so it's actually a more developed Kenyan, so you get a lot of things like that smokiness and the red fruits, those berries that we have on there. Yeah, that's why they're both at a level 4, because they have a pretty distinct, long, and lasting finish. And in addition to that, it's that kind of darker chocolate, so the chocolate is at a level 4. I mean, those 4 things complement each other perfectly, as they're all in the finish, they're all quite lasting, and they're all quite pronounced. So all of those justified there. Let's see what else we have. Cleanliness at a level 3. I mean, I usually don't chart cleanliness pretty high for Kenyans as a whole, so that's pretty decent. Body even run through the Chemex, because I know that this tasting wheel was made with the Chemex. It's higher on the body. Savory, toned down at level 3, which is in equal parts to the sweetness. That's great. So that's a huge selling point to me on this cup of coffee. Definitely going to be a little bit bitter. Let's see here. I mentioned that there was a fair bit of florals, kind of those more herbal florals definitely present. Pretty aesthetic cup of coffee as a whole, and a fair bit of spice. But as you can see, for the most part, with a couple exceptions here, this coffee is pretty well balanced. And those are the best things I can always say about medium, like slightly more medium-like cups of coffee, is if the tasting wheel is a bit more balanced, then that's probably one of the better attributes you can have for a more developed cup of coffee. So I really like the way that this tasting wheel looks. I think it's a great representation of what I was getting, and I feel like that's the best I could have gotten from this coffee as well. So my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee, I think it is hilarious that I am definitely a more lighter coffee drinker, and I definitely am not the biggest fan of washed Kenyans, but you kind of give me this more developed Kenyan, and more often than not I prefer it to the lighter Kenyans because it just does kind of dilute that super strong tomato savoriness from the cup. This is not going to be my favorite cup of coffee ever, but I was actually a little bit more impressed with this coffee than I think I was expecting going into it, especially based off that first impression. So this coffee improved for me, even though drinking it so late and after it's been roasted for what it is, I think I did a pretty nice job of it overall. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, it makes it a very easy, straightforward suggestion. Anybody that does like a little bit more medium of a Kenyan. So if you are a little bit more of a medium coffee drinker and you do like your Kenyans, I mean, I think this is a great fit. I think they did a pretty nice job of this. And I've heard that this coffee specifically is a pretty good cup of coffee, the Kiamugumo. So maybe it's just a cup of coffee, maybe it's just a really good one to begin with, and no matter who roasted it, it would be good, but I still want to give credit to Pilot because I think that this is a really nice cup of coffee overall. I think I'm going to leave this review at that though. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee or anything from Pilot, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it or them as well. If you enjoyed the content, give this video a like, subscribe if not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Kiamugumo Wash Process Kenya from Pilot Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.